With someone who's been involved in a big iris scanning technological program. Not something I agree with, I have to say, iris scanning, but what he found, and he's into none of this stuff, what he found as these people looked very closely at 2,300 eyes, to their amazement, in his estimation, about 4% of the eyes they looked at were of reptilian type and appearance. All over the internet, people started talking about this now, and these pictures are circulating. This might be probably is just a trick of the light, but it's very symbolic of what we're looking at. That was on the front of the Fortean Times, taking the piss out of me. I thought, thank you very much. Nice picture. I love that. Very symbolic. And it's all these other people and all that stuff. And another thing that you find is a number of therapists have sent me pictures. This is a common theme. Therapists working with satanically abused people, trying to get their minds back after all this abuse, and sexually abused people that have been in these mind control projects. And it's a very consistent theme that when these people who've been victims of this, they use a lot of drawing to try to draw out their memories. Again and again, what they draw are people with reptilian eyes. These are actually drawn by a satanically abused person, and these were sent to me with their permission by their therapist. Again, Roman Polanski, was talking from knowledge, shall I put it, when he made that film Rosemary's Baby in the 60s with Mia Farrow. And for anyone who doesn't know about that, if you can get hold of a copy, it's worth watching. Mia Farrow is pulled in unknowingly because they want her to interbreed with one of these non-human entities to give birth to a child of the bloodline. And this satanic group get hold of her, and they put her under mind control, and they impregnate her and stuff. And towards the end of the film, when she starts to realize what's going on, she goes into this apartment where it all went on, and memories start to come back, and she sees the baby she gave birth to in a non-conscious state, and you have a quick flash of it in the movie, and it's a reptilian baby with reptilian eyes. Well, Polanski should know, let's put it that way. All the way through history, you have this theme of possession and of fighting the snake or fighting the dragon and all the rest of it. That's the theme I'm talking about, and it's the software hybrid bloodline, which has led to hybrid people, possessed people, being in positions of power. So you look at the human level, but what's behind it? What's behind it? Now, I know something bloody strange is behind this bugger. I know from personal experience. Just very quickly, because I've told this story before. I was in a television, this is the 1980s, 1989. The Green Party, who I was speaking for at the time, had this one big election result in '89, the European elections, and I was asked to go along to Sky Television to comment as the results came in, because it was obvious we were going to do better than we've done before. And I go in to Sky Television, and I walk in, and they send me into this makeup room, and the door was open, and she leads me in, and I think the place is empty. And she sits me down, she says, someone will be along in a moment, and walks off. And as I turn, as she walked off, I'm looking down to my right, and there's Ted Heath, Prime Minister of Britain from 1970 to 74, the man who signed us into the European Union as it became. And he's sitting there, he's just been interviewed apparently, waiting to have his makeup taken off. So, you know, I looked at him, I said, all right, mate, how you doing, all that stuff. Never said a word. He's staring at the mirror on the wall, and he just turned his body, his chair, and he looked at me, never said a word throughout, ever. He looked at me with a strange look, and then his eyes started at the top of my head, and they slowly went down to my feet, and then went back again. Scanning me is all I can describe it as. And when he got back to the top, he turned, and he looked at the mirror. That was kind of strange enough, but when he was doing the scanning, his eyes went completely black. The whites, the bloody lot. I found this picture on the internet, which I think is done by some kind of contact lens or something, but it absolutely encapsulates what I saw. This total blackness. And what I was doing then, when I got into this stuff and I'm traveling around, I started coming across people who talked about these black-eyed people that they'd seen. I think, bloody hell, I've seen that. And I looked on the internet a few weeks ago. I did a little newsletter about this, and I found a number of references to people telling about their experiences of the black-eyed people. Now, when I looked at Heath's eyes in that black state, there was no point where I made eye contact with him. I was looking through him into something else. They were like two black holes. And then, of course, I've gone home to my family and said, you know, you never guess what's happened to me and Ted Heath tonight, what I've seen. But, of course, what is it? I have not got a clue. It's very strange. Then you get on with your life. But later I realized what I'd seen. I'd looked through into another dimension, to the dimension of the entity that's possessing this guy, or possessed him. And this is what is happening with so many of these fellas. Gold, he doesn't have to shift, does he? Cheney. You know, and so you're putting different people into power, but what you're putting into power is the same force. They only appear different because when you decode their 5-sense visible light level, they look different humans, but not necessarily so. And for me, a lot of these people are what I call sentient programs, or what the Matrix movie called sentient programs. Because this is a digital construct on one level, digital people can be put into this construct and appear to be just as real and normal as us, because it's just another hologram. It's just from a different source. So the woman in the red dress in the Matrix movie, which they put into a computer program, and she looked like anyone else, as if she was just a normal person in the street. I think those people exist, the more that I understand this. And some of these people could be them. The more that I look at this, there seems to be three types of people. There's the sentient programs, which are basically software programs playing out their program. And we're not talking about a PC on the desk computer software. We're talking about one that can interact and react and think for itself up to a point. Much more sophisticated. There's other people who are conscious, but their body conscious level is so dominant in the perception of reality that that's basically just a spectator. And then there are others, increasingly more as we wake up in this time that we're living in, that are actually multi-level connected. And those different people will see the same reality in a completely different way. So there we go, the red dress programs, a Neil Haig portrayal. Carl Sagan, the famous American cosmologist, he was so interested in the reptilian influence on human behavior through the reptilian genetics in the body that he wrote this book, The Dragons of Eden, and pointed out that understanding the reptilian history of humans is to understand so much about human behavior. Because the oldest part of the human brain is what they call the R complex in mainstream science, or the reptilian brain, and it is fundamentally influencing our behavior. This is mainstream science, from the reptilian brain, the R complex, we get cold-blooded behavior, no empathy with the consequences for others of our actions, territoriality, control, wanting to own and control everything, desire to control, an obsession with hierarchical structures of power, top-down control by the few, aggression, might is right, winner takes all. These things all come from the reptilian brain. And I have just described perfectly the behavior of these hybrid bloodlines that we call the Illuminati. That's why they can kill and pepper bomb whole cities of civilians, because they have no empathy with the victims and the consequences for them of their actions. You take empathy out, anything goes. The other thing with the reptilian brain, this is really important in terms of understanding how they control us, is this is where, in the R complex, we get our survival instincts from. Fight or flight. And it's great that we have these survival programs, because otherwise we wouldn't last long. It's keeping us alive in this reality, a lot of drawing to try to draw out their memories. Again and again, what they draw are people with reptilian eyes. These are actually drawn by a satanically abused person, and these were sent to me with their permission by their therapist. Again, Roman Polanski have sent me pictures. This is a common theme. Therapists working with satanically abused people, trying to get their minds back after all this abuse, and sexually abused people that have been in these mind control projects. And it's a very consistent theme that when these people have been victims of this, they usually with someone who's been involved in a big iris scanning technological program. Not something I agree with, I have to say, iris scanning, but what he found, and he's into none of this stuff, what he found as these people looked very closely at 2,300 eyes, to their amazement, in his estimation, about 4% of the eyes they looked at were of reptilian type and appearance. All over the internet, people have started talking about this now, and these pictures are circulating. This might be probably is just a trick of the light, but it's very symbolic of what we're looking at. That was on the front of the 14 Times, taking the piss out of me. I thought, thank you very much. Nice picture. I love that. Very symbolic. And it's all these other people and all that stuff. And another thing that you find is a number of therapists